welcome back. Maybe we can keep this small. It'll be a nice intimate group, wouldn't it? Yeah. So this week, I'm so happy to continue the discussion on quinoa, which is what we're going to do this week. Carla's got a really great demo today, furthering the quinoa idea. But this week, what we're going to talk about is the 5 essentials of balanced and satisfying meals, because there is a method to putting a meal together. There's certain components, in my opinion, that have to be there. So we'll talk about the 5 essentials of balanced and satisfying meals. We're going to talk about carbohydrates, which are villainized, okay, unfairly. How many you should be eating per meal for balanced blood sugar. Now, you don't have to worry. I'm not going to have you count carbohydrates and all that stuff, but I just want you to be aware, and I'll get into like a little bit of a biology lesson, slight biology lesson of why I'm talking about carbohydrates. And then I've created something, very simple meal planning tool called the Mix and Match Meal Plans. And so I'm going to teach you how to use that to create healthy and personalized meals. So we're gonna jump right in, and a lot of this is going to extend over to next week's as well, because next week we're talking about, quick and healthy dinners, how to plan that, how to do those in a flash. So a lot of this will carry over to next week. So if you remember last week, there was one thing that I told you, if you remember nothing else, to remember this phrase. Anybody remember what I said?
Yeah, read those food labels.
Read those. Well, that was one, because that was homework, right?
You will crave what you eat.
Yes, yes. So before we get into the homework check-in, I want you to just think about that phrase, that what you feed your body most, it will crave. And we're going to revisit that in a second. So homework check-in, food labels, right. Did anybody take me up on that little homework assignment and evaluate their pantry, their refrigerator, their freezer, pull out some items? Anybody do that? What'd you find? Oh, that's not a good face.
Soup is difficult.
Yeah, soup is. What did you find in the soup?
A whole lot of stuff that surprisingly you couldn't pronounce.
Yeah.
And it was like, really?
What is that? Right. Yeah, so the labels, the offensive ingredients that I specifically wanted you to look at were the trans fats, high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, and food dyes. So did you find any of those, do you know, in that? You did? Yeah. Oh, wow, in soup. Wow.
Some of the trans fats, in the really good soups.
Right. And remember what I said last week about trans fats? They're a cheap alternative to like butter and real fat. So the only reason they put them in there is because they're inexpensive to use, right, at our health expense. Anybody else find anything interesting in their cupboards, in their refrigerator, freezer, that they're willing to admit? No. Well, I can share with you. I was getting ready to throw these out because they're expired. But I went into my medicine cabinet because we had like supplements falling out every time we'd open up we have a little cupboard in our kitchen where we have all of our supplements and stuff. And so my husband said, we've got to do something about this, because every time I open this up, they're like flying and hitting me in the head. So I went through and I got rid of a bunch of stuff, and I threw these things out, and I said, well, wait a minute. I know I can find something nasty in these medicines. So Pepto-Bismol, this just killed me. Now, we don't think of this as food, right? Because we don't eat this every day. Hopefully, we don't eat this every day. But with the ingredients in here, where was it? Inactive ingredients, there's sucralose, which is that artificial sweetener, right? It contains D&C red number 28, red number 22. I mean, food color to make it pink. And that's the only reason why they're using it, is to make it pink, right? And then this one, the Tums, these are expired. They contain, where was that? Okay, so it has aspartame, right? So that's the artificial sweetener. It has FD&C yellow number 6. and also, well, sorbitol, which is an alcohol, sugar alcohol. But yeah, aspartame and food coloring. So even though it might not be food, check your medicines too, because why do they, I mean, really, why do they have to add food coloring to these? I mean, we don't really think these are oranges, right? But they have to make you believe that they're orange. So yeah, just, you know, I hope that it provided you with a little eye-opening experience as to, you know, what you have in there. And I'm not asking you to go in there and throw it all out. It's just really awareness. It's really all about awareness.
What was the concern about the food coloring again?
The food coloring, there's certain food dyes, or really any food dyes in general, that were linked to certain types of cancers and things like that, and also can be a really big concern with children with behavioral issues, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Food dyes tend to really aggravate that system. I used to work for a company that we coached and counseled moms and dads and children with ADHD, and one of the things that they said definitively, they said, I know when my child has had something with food coloring or a food dye in it, because they come home and they are a different child, on or off of their medications. So there's something in that that's obviously not natural. Food should not create that in our system, excitability or, you know, enhanced excitability. So that was a little bit about the homework last week. I'm going to give you guys some homework again this week, but this is kind of a good one. This one won't make you feel bad. But again, don't throw anything out, right? Just be aware of it, and next time when you go shopping, look and say, okay, well, I'm going to look for an alternative, right? So what you feed your body most, it'll crave. This is a powerful statement, and I wanted to start off with this because if it's true, in fact, that what you feed your body most, it will crave over time, and you want to crave healthy foods. Let's say you want to crave blueberries and quinoa and salmon instead of, you know, potato chips and ice cream and French fries. You want to crave healthier foods because, let's be honest, most people aren't setting out to crave junk food, right? It just happens, and then it sort of, it gets a hold of us. So if that's your desire to crave healthier foods, the worst possible thing that you could do is to create 2 lists of foods. One list that says, these are all the foods I'm going to eat, right? I'm going to be good. I'm going to eat my salmon and my quinoa and my berries and all this good stuff. And then these are all the foods over here I'm going to stay away from. And I'm going to put a big red X on those foods. I strongly suggest against that method. And unfortunately, this is what most diet programs out there get wrong. They have this short little list of all the foods you're allowed to eat, and then this really, really long list of everything you're supposed to stay away from. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not standing here telling you that all of these foods that aren't so good for you, you should be loading up on them and have them in your cabinets and make them available to tempt yourself just because. No, but I need you to understand that when you put that red X on a food, no matter how good or bad it is for you, you're setting yourself up for failure. Okay, so, and here's why. We all have this thing called human nature, right? And if you think about the last diet or the last program that you tried, or maybe it was a self-designed thing that you said, first of the year I'm going to, you know, not going to have donuts anymore. I'm not going to have chocolate anymore. I'm going to stay away from all these foods. And then you put the red X on it, right? So let's say, for example, Hershey's Kisses. You say, you know what, I love them, but they're getting in the way of my, you know, blood sugar or my health, and I'm going to just put the red X on the Hershey's Kiss. I'm not going to eat them anymore. Do you think that you're going to forget about that Hershey's Kiss? Do you think you're going to go, okay, Pop, it's out of my head. I'm never going to think about kisses again? No, because we're not built that way. It's human nature, right? You put the red X on any food. I don't even care if it's carrots, something that's good for you. Maybe it's something that you don't like, but you do that, and all of a sudden, you begin to obsess about that food. You start to think about it, and you're starting to think, what in the world's wrong with me? I'm thinking about Hershey's Kisses all day long. Before, I never had a problem. I mean, maybe you had a really healthy relationship with Hershey's Kisses, and every evening you had 1 or 2 after dinner, and you were fine, right? You never had a problem with them. But as soon as you put that red X on, you automatically assign that food power. And eventually, you're going to start dreaming about Hershey's Kisses, right? You're not going to be able to get them out of your mind because this is how we are built. But you're not going to dream about a little tiny Hershey's Kiss, right? That doesn't work that way. This time, you're going to picture this huge kiss in your head, and you're going to dream about it, and you're not going to be able to get it out of your head. Now, when you finally get your hands on a Hershey's Kiss, do you think you're going to just eat one? Heck no, right? You've built it up. You've assigned all this power. You're going to eat the whole bag or half the bag. And then you're going to go, I have no willpower. I'm not meant to eat healthy. I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And that's totally wrong. Where you failed was putting the red X on that food. So what I'm suggesting to you is not that you go out and buy these foods and keep them around, but that you practice, coping with your humanness, because we all have this, right? We're not robots. We all have this. You must be able to make peace with food. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to be open and free to make healthy choices, because the food will control you, and you will never have that freedom of choice because you feel, I can only have this, and I want this, but I can't have it. You need to open it up and say, I can have that if I choose to have that, but I choose not to because it's not in alignment with my health goals. That is so powerful. So, 4 words that can help you make peace with food, and I want you to remember these, just like, what you feed your body most it'll crave, very powerful. The 4 words that you need to remember and keep in your mind, because this is all about choice, is no food is forbidden. I want you to approach everything that way. When you go to the grocery store, you go to the grocery store with your health goals in mind, right? I'm trying to lower my cholesterol. I'm just trying to feel better, right? But I can have anything I want in this grocery store. I can go through the bakery, and I do this every time I shop at Heinen's. I go through the bakery, and I smell the wonderful bakery and the cookies, and I love it. And I go through, and I'm like, I can have that. I can have that. That delicious cake, those delicious Two Brothers brownies, if you've never had them, they're amazing. I can have those if I want those. But you know what? I feel so good. And maybe I will have those on a holiday, but today, no. And I bypass it, and I feel, now I'm in control, right? I'm in the driver's seat. But when you walk through there and go, can't have that donut, can't have it, can't have it, can't, doctor says I can't have it, it owns you, immediately owns you. So lift those red X's off, really get inside and determine what your goals are, and then you're at so much more of a peaceful place with food. That's what true peace with food is, and that's what every diet program out there gets wrong. They tell you no. And they tell you no for a good reason, because these foods aren't good for you if you eat them every day. But they forget that one simple piece, that you're going to carry that, and food's going to own you. And you control food. Remember that. So, little biology lesson here. We're opening up talking about carbohydrates because I want to dispel the myth that carbohydrates are bad for you. They're not bad for you. It's which ones are you choosing to eat that can throw your health off, throw your blood sugar off. And even the good carbohydrates, your fruits and your vegetables and things like that, we can overdo those as well. So we want to talk about not only quality of carbohydrate, which is the most important, but also quantity. So I want to share with you in this context. So you have this wonderful body with something called a pancreas. Now that pancreas sits there, I believe it's behind the stomach, I'm not sure, but it's an elongated organ that is responsible for producing insulin, okay? So when you eat a food that is carbohydrate rich or has carbohydrate in it, like an apple or any kind of fruit, those are carbohydrates, or potatoes, or any kind of vegetable, even green vegetables, those are primarily carbohydrate, less carbohydrate than a potato or an apple, but they're still carbohydrate. Yogurt, unless it's Greek yogurt, plain Greek yogurt, then it's pretty much protein, but pretty much cow's milk-based yogurts and milk in general is carbohydrate rich. Beans and lentils, we talked about those last week, and we actually even have some beans in our recipe here today. Those are protein, but also carbohydrate. Breads and pastas and cereals, and then sweets, sugar, juices, sodas, cakes, candies, all those things. Sugar is a carbohydrate. So no matter what carbohydrate you put in your body, it is going to trigger your pancreas, okay? So here's what happens. When your stomach, when you eat, let's say, an apple, and your body starts to break that apple down, right? You chew it, body starts to break that apple down. It breaks it down into glucose or sugar, You know, same meaning, right? Glucose and sugar are the same meaning for these purposes here. So when that happens, your blood sugar increases. It increases when you eat an apple, it increases when you eat carrots, it increases when you eat a potato, it increases when you eat a piece of cake, right? And so when their blood sugar increases, it triggers that pancreas to begin producing insulin, okay? So your pancreas starts to produce that hormone insulin. And insulin's job is to sweep up all the sugar in your blood and then shuttle it into your cells where it belongs, okay? That's what a healthy body is designed to do. All of our bodies. Now, if someone was born with or has type 1 diabetes, you know, they don't have that insulin production, okay? Or it might be compromised in a type 2 diabetes state. But in either case, thank you for the biology lesson, right? Okay, what does this have to do with meal planning? I know what you guys are thinking, right? But in any case, I want you to understand something, because this really puts things into perspective in terms of health and weight management and metabolism. If you have diabetes or prediabetes, or you know somebody in your family that has it, almost all of us know somebody very close to us that falls into one of those categories, and you want to manage your weight and you want to manage your hunger and your cravings, what you have to understand is that insulin, that hormone that you're triggering to eat every time you eat something sugary or carbohydrate rich, is a fat storage hormone. And the more insulin you force your body to produce by eating more and more and more of those carbohydrates, it increases your food cravings and increases hunger. So this is what happens when we eat something sweet, like jelly beans, or we get on the sugar kick, and then the blood sugar spikes, insulin rushes in, sweeps it up, blood sugar plummets. We get hungry again. That's rebound hunger. Now we want more. We want more and more sugar to keep that high up. And that's this whole kind of this rise and fall of the blood sugar and this insulin response. So the more insulin you force your body to create, the lower your metabolism, the lower your fat burning potential. So what I'm saying in all of this is not that you give up carbohydrates, but they're not free. They will impact your blood sugar, especially the higher glycemic ones, like the sugars. So when people say a calorie is a calorie, I 100% completely disagree with that. Because if I were to give you 2,000 calories worth of sugar and 2,000 calories worth of good healthy fats and good proteins and quinoa and things like that, your body is going to respond completely different with the second meal plan. You're going to stay hungry, you're going to store more fat with all that sugar. So a calorie really is not a calorie. So understand that. Now, what I don't want, because I can read minds. So if carbohydrates cause you to increase your insulin production and sugar, well then I'll just stay away from carbohydrates, right? And I'll be fine. Trust me, I've been doing this forever, and anytime I coach somebody one-on-one, they're like, well, I just won't eat carbs. No, you don't want to do that, because your life's going to stink if you don't ever have a carbohydrate, right? And it's not healthy to do that. You need them. So what it is, it's about balancing them, making sure you're getting them, because you would be missing out on all vegetables and fruits and quinoa and everything like that. You just want to, shoot after the right ones, go after the right ones, and the other ones, the cravings will take care of themselves when you're not eating them as much. So that we go back to that, what you feed your body most, it will crave. So carbohydrates are essential, but we probably don't need to be eating them in the amounts that we are, okay? They do trigger more hunger and more fat storage because of that insulin response. So when we plan our meals, we're going to add the carbohydrates in there, but we're going to use this kind of little toolkit that I'm going to share with you to plug them in, but plug them in, safely, in good quantity, and in good quality. In my opinion, there's a method to meal planning. We don't just throw food on a plate and say it's a meal. I mean, you could, but how is that going to affect your insulin? How is that going to affect your blood sugar? Is it going to keep you satisfied? I mean, I don't know about you, but after I eat, I want to feel like I've eaten. I don't want to go back to the pantry in an hour and say, okay, did I just eat? I feel like I didn't eat anything. And that happens when you're not planning appropriately. So 5 essentials of balanced meals. This is probably going to sound very familiar to you. Some of these would be healthy carbohydrates need to be part of the meal, healthy proteins, healthy fats, functional foods, which we'll talk about what these are in a moment, and water. That's a not a surprise, right? So healthy carbohydrates or carbs, you hear them both ways. So low glycemic index is preferred because the higher the glycemic index is in a carbohydrate food, the more that shoots your blood sugar up. So low glycemic index carbohydrates like, the berries of your rainbow fruits and veggies. Most of your veggies are low glycemic. And, potatoes are not low glycemic, but they're not bad for you, right? You don't want to eat potatoes every single day as your vegetable, or French fries every single day, because French fries aren't a vegetable. I'm sorry, they're just not. They're not. Sweet potatoes, I have a lower glycemic index than white potatoes, which you wouldn't think they would, but they do. They're not bad. Potatoes have places in a healthy diet, totally can fit, but you just want to make sure that you're choosing more of the non-starchy if your goal is to kind of watch the blood sugar. And also listen to your body. I know when I eat a white potato, it doesn't do anything for me. And it's because when you realize how high glycemic it is, your body digests it quick, shoots the blood sugar up, hunger returns, there's that whole insulin response thing going on. So I kind of stay away from potatoes. On Thanksgiving, of course, I eat them, but I just know for me, they almost seem to make me hungrier, and it's because of that whole glycemic response. Of course, quinoa we talked about last week, that's a carbohydrate, but these are all important for energy, so we do need these as part of a healthy diet. Again, I said glycemic index measures how quickly your body responds to glucose in the food. So if it's a high glycemic food, your blood sugar will spike rapidly. If it's low, it won't rise as quickly. Typically, berries tend to be very low glycemic, non-starchy vegetables, low glycemic, quinoa, low glycemic, beans, low glycemic. You won't find a glycemic index attached to proteins like meats and seafood because there's no carbohydrate in there, so it's only attached to carbohydrate food. When your blood sugar spikes, so when I eat that white potato, my blood sugar spikes, I experience more of that crash and burn. Hunger tends to revisit very quickly. That's why that happens, because now if I had that potato with some kind of protein and healthy fat, it would slow down that response. But a potato by itself, for me, it just doesn't do it. And of course, the spikes and dips create that rebound hunger. Even mood swings, right? So when you have that spike in blood sugar and that crash, it does affect your mood. It certainly does. So what this looks like in terms of per meal. What my recommendations are anywhere between 1 to 2 healthy carbohydrate choices per meal. And what this looks like, and before I put this on the screen, please don't get out your measuring cups and don't get out your scales and say, well, Melanie said that, a cup of vegetables is a serving, so I need to get my little measuring cup. Don't do that. Because you're not relying on your body to tell you when to stop eating. You're relying on these stupid measuring cups that don't mean anything. I mean, when you're following a recipe, it's one thing, but don't do the old, diet thing where, we can measure everything out. That's just too diet-like, and you don't want those memories, okay? So you put as much on there as you want to eat. Now, I put the serving sizes on there so that you know. Let's say you're sitting down and you're eating, a side of vegetables, and you say, okay, is this 1 or 2? Do I think this is a serving? It's important to know what a serving looks like, don't get me wrong, but don't get into that whole weighing and measuring thing, because that's just no fun for anybody, right? When we look at fruit, what one healthy carbohydrate choice would be like a half a cup of berries, or a very, very small apple. Or beans and legumes, lentils, half cup cooked would be a serving, one carbohydrate choice, okay? Yogurt, plain Greek or Icelandic yogurt, 1 cup. Kefir, we talked about kefir last week, I believe, which is that, very probiotic, rich, cultured milk beverage. That would be a cup. Sprouted breads, we talked about the Ezekiel breads. Those really good sprouted breads would be a slice. Or 1 ingredient whole grain, so like the quinoa that we talked about, buckwheat or oats or millet. That's a single ingredient, really good, a more ancient grain. would be about a half a cup cooked. Again, don't get crazy with measuring cups. Just know that if you have a half a cup of quinoa, say, okay, so that's a good carbohydrate choice. Now let me fill in with more non-starchy vegetables, some protein on there, some fat, which we'll get to in a minute. But that just kind of gives you an idea of what a carbohydrate would look like, and you need them, right? Don't skip out on these. Then you want to do some healthy protein on that plate, right? Plant-based proteins, we talked about these last week. Beans and lentils are plant-based proteins. Quinoa is a plant-based protein. Tempeh, which I'm not sure if I talked about it last week, and I brought mine from my refrigerator at home. Anybody ever have tempeh before? It is a fermented soy product, so it's not like the soy that you hear controversy with soy and cancer and things like that. Fermented soy is a lot different. It behaves differently in the body. I believe in Japan it is. They eat tons of cultured and fermented soy products, and it actually is very protective of the heart. And it has like the healthy bacteria. So anytime you culture something, you're getting those good probiotics and healthy bacteria. So it looks not attractive at all. I will be the first to admit that this does not look like something that if I didn't taste it, I would want to cook up in my frying pan. But I will tell you, it's a great meat substitute. What I do is I cook it in some coconut oil on my stove, and then I put some either like soy sauce or liquid aminos on there, and I brown up both sides, and then I put it on top of a salad, and it's amazing. So if you're ever doing a meatless day, this is a great meat alternative. And you could find this at any grocery store. I know with our store we sell it more like in the deli area department, but yeah, you can find that anywhere. It's not exclusive to Heinen's. Of course, we also talked about chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, good plant-based proteins, and of course, lean meats and seafood. If you're a meat eater and you like that, that would be considered a healthy, balanced protein. So what does that look like then on a plate? And first of all, what's the purpose of protein? You need it on the plate. Why? Because it helps slow down the digestion of the carbohydrate. It helps to balance the blood sugar. So if you're just eating a big old bowl of rice, your blood sugar is going to spike up. You add, maybe some beans to that rice, maybe some grilled chicken to that. It's not going to spike your blood sugar like it would if it was just the rice by itself. So it helps to slow that blood sugar, the effect of that blood sugar. So what it looks like, I suggest anywhere between 1 to 3 proteins per meal, depending on what that protein is. So for example, if it's a bean and legume, which also counts as a protein, right? It counts as a carbohydrate and a protein, so it's like a dual thing. You could use both of those there. About a half a cup cooked, same as a carbohydrate. If you're doing seafood, about a 3-ounce portion. Now, 3 ounces is very small, but look at where I said 1 to 3 choices. So if you went up to 6 ounces, which is, you can get a nice 6-ounce piece or even more at a restaurant, you're not like skimping there, right? If you were doing eggs, or another protein-rich food, it might not be appropriate to have 3 at one time. So you kind of just, use your common sense there. But I know when I go out to dinner, I always get salmon, and that salmon's usually about 6 to 7 ounces. So that's my protein on my plate, is that salmon, right? My carbohydrates are the nice double order of broccoli that I get on the side, and it's amazing with that. Unprocessed lean meats like grass-fed beef, chicken, turkey, same thing, 3 ounces, but you can go up upwards of 6 ounces to 9 ounces when you go out to dinner. If they ever served you a 3-ounce piece of beef in a restaurant, you'd go, okay, where the heck's the rest of it, right? So let's be realistic. We're not going to ask for a 3-ounce portion. You're going to get probably more like a 6 or even 8-ounce portion. Nuts and seeds also fall in this category, so you'll notice a lot of these have kind of like dual roles. They're both proteins and fats, or carbohydrates and proteins, and that would be about a 1/4 of a cup, so that could be your protein. Nut and seed butters, peanut butter, almond butter, sunflower seed butter, that would be about a tablespoon. Chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, what we talked about, those are another tablespoon. So you add a tablespoon of chia seeds or flax seeds to a nice smoothie, that could count as the protein if you didn't want to use a protein powder. And then eggs, we talked last week about the free-range organic eggs. 1 egg would be considered 1 serving. So if you really did want a 3-egg omelet, it still fits, right? You go out to breakfast at Bob Evans, usually they're like 3-egg omelets, there's your protein, right? Tempeh, we talked about that, about 3 ounces. And protein powder. You can use protein powder. I do that every morning in my smoothie. I use, a nice half scoop to 1 scoop of that bone broth protein powder that I was talking about last week. That's my protein. So that would be about a scoop. So that's your protein piece of your plate. And just so you know, this little mix and match meal plan thing that I have, this single sheet, that's all of this information is on this sheet for you so that you can, reference that. Now, healthy fats. This piece is key, and this piece is where many people, they forget about fat because they heard back in the 80s and 90s that fat was bad for you, and so you have to stay away from fat, and that's the absolute opposite of what we need for healthy blood sugar control. If you don't have fat in your diet, you're going to struggle with blood sugar control, so it needs to be there. Nuts, seeds, avocados, again, these are kind of proteins and fats. They can count as for a dual purpose. Olive oil, coconut oil. So when you're cooking, it's okay to use coconut oil instead of a squirt of Pam. Get rid of that. Use coconut oil, use real butter, when you're cooking, but just a little bit. The Pam is kind of silly in my mind. Because when I use it, you know what I do? I'm like, right? So by the time it's done, I might as well have just used a darn tablespoon of butter, right? So you think you're saving, but you're really not, and it's healthier to just use coconut oil or just that really good grass-fed butter or ghee like we talked about. Purpose of fat, satiety. Another word for saying, okay, after I eat, I'm actually full when I have fat, okay? Fat does not trigger an insulin response. So when you're eating fat as part of a meal, when you're having a nice avocado as a side dish, that's not going to spike your blood sugar. It has a very neutral effect. So it has to be part of the meal to help slow down those other carbohydrates that are part of that meal. That's why my apple, I always have the almond butter with it, because that apple by itself is going to shoot the blood sugar up. Not as high as a pixie stick would or, a candy bar, but I want to make sure I get the almond butter on there so that it slows down the effect of that apple. So there's reasons behind why I do what I do. So what does that look like on a plate? I say anywhere between 2 to 3 healthy fat choices. In my smoothie, I usually put a tablespoon of chia seeds, I put a tablespoon of almond butter, and I put usually like a quarter of an avocado. So you'd look at that and go, oh my God, that's a lot of fat. But I'll tell you, that smoothie keeps me full for about 4 hours to 5 hours. I'm not turning around looking for more snacks. So it really does serve a good purpose. So what does that look like in terms of portion sizes? Again, nuts and seeds, a quarter of a cup. Nut butters, a tablespoon. Those seeds, another tablespoon. Those oils, so coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, flax oil, about a tablespoon. And I really do consider, I'm sorry, I didn't add it on here, but I added it on here, your grass-fed butter or your ghee. I really do consider that a healthier fat because it's serving a purpose. It's a pure fat. You're not having to, it's not made with plastics and a bunch of inflammatory oils. So I do consider that. And avocados, of course, that is a fat. Now, functional foods. I can guarantee everybody here does some sort of functional food on a daily basis, but you don't realize you're doing it. And what they are foods that have a potentially positive effect on your health beyond basic nutrition. So beyond carbohydrates and proteins and fats and vitamins and minerals. These are kind of like little boosters that you add to your food for health and wellness. And what they are, and I recommend at least one of these per meal, okay? So they'd be things like basil. How many of you cook with basil or oregano or cacao? Cacao is chocolate, okay? So cocoa powder is basically, cacao powder is chocolate powder, right? This is what you'd bake with if you were baking, cookies or brownies, and it's asking for cocoa powder. That's what it is. It's ground up, and it's very intense. Tons of antioxidants, tons of magnesium in there, which helps with blood sugar control and mood too. That's why people are happy when they eat chocolate. Another thing, even though this isn't in a powdered form, when you go shopping and you look for chocolate, look for at least the 70% to 72% cacao. The darker the chocolate, the higher that percentage cacao will be. And at 70 to 72%, that's where you're getting more into like the functional food range. It's actually really beneficial for you. Now, it's going to not taste like a Hershey's bar, right? It's going to not taste like a Reese's peanut butter cup. In fact, my little friend over here, when I first started working for Heinen's, she said to me, did I tell you guys this story last week? It was hysterical. She said to me, oh, she opens one of these up and she says, would you like a piece of chocolate? And I said, oh, I'd love a piece of chocolate. So she gave me one individual squares, right? And then I went into my car just to kind of take a little break, and I opened the chocolate, fully anticipating like a Godiva experience, right? It's going to melt in my mouth. And I took one bite of that and I said, oh my God, this woman just fed me baking chocolate. I know this is not chocolate. Well, my taste buds were so polluted with like the milk chocolates and the white chocolates that this didn't taste right to me. Now, I mean, this is like 100% cacao. You taste a square of this, you're good. You're not eating the whole box. And if you did, something's wrong, because you really don't want more than one square, because it does the trick. And that bitterness that you're tasting, that really just intense, that is the antioxidant potential. You're tasting antioxidants. So I swore she fed me baking. I'm like, she just gave me baking chocolate. Is this some sort of initiation or something? Will she stay? But cacao is wonderful. I put a tablespoon of cacao in my smoothie every morning. It gives it that little extra chocolate flavor. It's delicious. Cilantro. Carla's going to be cooking with cilantro today. She'll show you what the properties of cilantro can offer. Cinnamon, last week, right? We did some cinnamon. That's a functional food. Blood sugar control. Ginger, told you about my fantasy with ginger, my love of ginger. That also goes in my smoothie. I put like a nice 1/2 inch to 1 inch piece of fresh ginger in my smoothie. Matcha tea, we didn't really talk much about this last week, but it's really concentrated green tea. So some people, if they really like green tea, matcha tea is green tea in powdered form, so it's super, super concentrated, really, really high in antioxidants. And then we've got things like oregano that we're probably already using, parsley, and what typically, turmeric, we also talked about turmeric, and about a teaspoon to a tablespoon or whatever makes sense with your meal, right? I mean, you're not going to overdo it because then it will ruin the flavor. So anywhere between a teaspoon or tablespoon or more if you like it. Fifth essential of meals, this is a no-brainer, right, is water, okay? Now, sure, yes, you drink it before meals and it helps to fill up some space in your stomach and you don't eat as much and all that. But when you're hungry, you're hungry. But oftentimes when people are dehydrated, they misinterpret that as hunger, and it really is true. But when your body is hungry, water is not going to satisfy you, right? We know this. Why I choose water, there's a couple reasons why I chose to put it here on the 5 essentials. It gets you going, both energetically, right, and biologically. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't have to get into the whole biology of that. When you are dehydrated, you aren't going to the bathroom on a regular basis, and you're not a happy camper. Right? Constipated people are not happy. So water, being fully hydrated, really helps get you going both ways. Energetically, if you're zapped of energy and you look at your water bottle and you haven't had a sip, before reaching for coffee, drink about 8 to 10 ounces of water. That can certainly wake up the brain and just wake up your body. 60% of your body is water. So if we're not fully hydrated, we're not delivering nutrients to our body cells like we need to. Even if you're mildly dehydrated, you're not going to feel it. You're not going to feel thirsty when you're mildly dehydrated, but your energy can be drained. So, how much? I like to do this little kind of 20-20-20 rule, right? When you first wake up, this might be difficult for some of you, especially when the thought of water in general just doesn't even sit well with you. But I challenge you, when you first wake up, to drink, if you can, 20 ounces of water. And see what a difference. Do this for a week. In fact, this is part of your homework assignment. Do this for 1 week, and I guarantee something is going to change. You are going to feel more awake, more alive. Your digestion is going to improve. 20 ounces with lunch, if you can. And then 20 ounces with dinner. So after dinner, you should have had at least a good 60 ounces of water. Now, give or take a few ounces. Sometimes I only drink, my whole thing is, this is what I use to drink out of, that's 16 ounces there. Sometimes I only get 16 first thing in the morning, but I take my supplements with it, so it makes it go down a lot easier. Give or take a few ounces. But what do you think the best hydration status is? How can you check your hydration status to determine what the right number is for you? Any thoughts on that? How can you tell if you're hydrated? Do you know? Do you just guess?
When you use the restroom?
Yeah. Look at your pee, right? Just if you're not looking at it, you need to start looking at it because that's the best determinant of how hydrated you really are. What should it look like? That's not pee in that cup, just so you know. That's white wine, like a really nice white wine. It should be almost clear, very pale yellow color. That's good indication. That's not, okay? If it looks like the color of beer or apple juice, you're dehydrated, okay? That's not pee either. That's just bad urine. So you don't want it to look like that. And oftentimes I can tell you, I know when I have not had enough water because that's what it looks like, right? So start looking at your urine, use that as the determinant. I can tell you some days I don't drink 60 ounces of water. I might do a little less because I'm like, all right, it's clear. I get it. I don't need any more, right? It all depends on how hot it is outside, your activity level, your body weight, many determinants. But that 20-20-20 rule is just something that I like to keep in mind because we forget sometimes to drink water. So when we're looking at water, one extra little bonus. Anybody here use lemon in their water? Yes, okay. Wonderful addition. This is something you can start doing today and you'll seriously notice some major improvements in your health. What it does, it activates bile flow in your body, which can help remove fat-soluble toxins. The best thing you can do when you wake up in the morning, now part of my 20 ounces is like a little mug of hot lemon water. So all I do is I have a little addition on my coffee pot which dispenses hot water. So I fill that up and I put a tablespoon of lemon juice in there. And if you think you need coffee to go to the bathroom in the morning, I challenge you to try lemon water because that will seriously cleans the body out. It also helps with sugar cravings. If you're having sugar cravings, lemon water helps cut that need for sweet. So you could either, like I did for probably a year, like a dummy, squeezing lemons. I'm like, this is for the birds, squeezing lemons, all these lemons. And then somebody shared with me that we sell this wonderful pure lemon, which is literally just lemon. Just there's nothing added to it, no sugars, nothing. It's just fresh squeezed organic lemons. You get 74 servings per container. Now I love it. I just shake it up, add a tablespoon to my hot water, and I drink that first thing in the morning. And it's just amazing. So if you want to get toxins out, manage the sugar cravings and things, start doing more lemon water, especially first thing in the morning. And when it's hot, it's the best. Improves digestion as well and blood sugar control. So if you have issues with blood sugar control, lemon water is great. And we talked about the appetite. So I gave you all this information, healthy carbs, healthy fats, healthy proteins, functional foods, water. How do you fit this all together? This is going to be this little mix and match meal plan thing that I shared with you. This is going to be your little toolkit here. It's going to sound like a lot of work, but it really isn't. So let me share with you. On the front is the little template of what the foods are, and on the back it's giving you more detail about every single one. I mean, this isn't a comprehensive list, but it gives you a really good start. So here's what this looks like. On a plate, 1 to 2 healthy carb choices, 1 to 3 healthy proteins, 2 to 3 healthy fats, and functional food, and then your water, right? So here's what that looks like. Egg in a cup. This is a breakfast example that you have the recipe here in your little folded pamphlet. When we look at the recipe, 2 healthy carbohydrate choices. So what would that be in this recipe? Well, when I look at the ingredients in this recipe, those are your vegetables. So the spinach, the tomatoes, the mushrooms, and the lentils would count as a carbohydrate, right? They are carbohydrate rich. Protein, the eggs are your protein, as well as the lentils. It also serves a dual purpose. Healthy fat, This original recipe did not have avocado. I added the avocado to it because it needed a little bit of good healthy fat. So I added the avocado in there. And I believe in this recipe it's half of a small diced avocado. The functional food is the cilantro. You put that all together, you follow the recipe, that's a complete meal. Now, you may be satisfied with that. That satisfies me because it really is a filling meal. It looks small, but it really is filling. If you wanted something else and you weren't completely satisfied after you ate that and you let it digest, eat something else. But just know that that is a complete meal that should satisfy you. And if it doesn't, eat a little bit more. Last week's cinnamon quinoa breakfast bowl, which I also put the recipe again in here so you could have it all in one pamphlet here. So it has 2 healthy carbohydrate choices, the apples and the quinoa. Protein, quinoa kind of doubles as a protein. Almonds also. Fats, almonds are a fat as well as a protein. And if you use the grass-fed butter, that's giving you a little bit more of the fat. And the functional food, Carla used cinnamon there. So that was a complete meal, provided that you added some of that fat in it and you just didn't have a big bowl of quinoa with maple syrup and nothing else. So see, when I grabbed that bowl, I knew right away I need to add some fat. So I added some almonds to it, some berries to it to give you a little bit of carbohydrate. But there's a method to that. It needed a little, needed a little fat to it. Carla's going to be demoing here in a minute 5-ingredient Mexican quinoa. So that recipe has between 2 to 3 healthy carbohydrate choices from the quinoa, the black beans, and the corn that she uses. Protein, quinoa, and black beans, they serve as both. And it doesn't have any healthy fat in it, which doesn't make it a bad recipe, but what could you add to a Mexican quinoa dish to give it a little extra fat? Any ideas?
I would add butter.
Butter? Okay.
Or avocado.
Avocado. That's exactly what I would do. I would dice up, quarter of an avocado. Now it's good, right? I never go to Chipotle and forego the guacamole. Why would I? It's got the great brown rice and all the vegetables and all that, but where's the fat? Put some guacamole on there, right? And then the functional food, she's using cumin and also cilantro. So what she created there is a complete meal. And if you wanted to add a little bit of extra protein, you could add some, chicken or whatever you wanted to that to make it non-vegetarian based. But that literally is a complete meal. It fits the mold. Does this make sense to you? Is this something that you think you could do to create a meal based on this template, or does it seem too tedious and difficult? So, what we're going to do, I'm going to challenge you for next week. I'm going to challenge you to do that 20-20-20 rule. You might be in the bathroom until next Wednesday, but I'm going to challenge you to drink that 20 ounces or as close, even if you can only drink 8 when you first wake up. Add a little bit of lemon, make it a little easier. 20 ounces when you first wake up, 20 with lunch, 20 with dinner. Keep yourself hydrated. Watch the difference. Start to pay attention to how you feel, and I guarantee you will feel different. Second homework assignment, I want you to look at this template, kind of study it a little bit, and then just every day, either breakfast or lunch, you could do both if you want, but choose one meal that you can follow this little meal template. And I bet you any money, what you're doing already, you're probably pretty darn close to this. It might just need a tweak or two. Maybe you need to add a functional food. Maybe you need to, add a carbohydrate. Maybe you're not including that and you're missing out on some really valuable nutrition. So water and then also the mix and match template. Does that sound good? And just be prepared to tell me what you did. Report, There's no right or wrong, and we can help you with this. Absolutely. So next week, I'm going to turn it over to Carla, but next week we're going to be talking about quick and healthy dinners, and this is going to be a really nice way that you can meal plan one day a week and create a full week's worth of meals. So I'm going to turn it on over to Carla.
Great. Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone again. So the dish I'm making today that Mel talked some about already is one of my faves, just one of my faves. It reminds me of that really good Mexican rice dish that you get in a Mexican restaurant. It has a reddish hue to it. It's kind of crunchy. It's full of flavor. It's robust. It's filling. I healthied it up a little bit. I don't know if that's a word, but I did it. So here we go. It fits all of my criteria for meals. It's economical. It's simple, 5 ingredients. It's delicious, and it's really, really good for us. So, and we're using quinoa today in a different format. Last week I used white, and we made a nice hot breakfast bowl. Today we're going to use red. And you guys remember my secret for cooking the perfect pot of quinoa was to cook it uncovered for 15 minutes at a low simmer, turn the heat off, put the lid on, and steam it for the last 5 minutes.
I did that, and that was amazing. I've never done that before, but I
It
made
work.
quinoa, and I'm like, oh, this
Okay,
works.
good. Yeah, I can't
Yay.
tell you over the years how many times I have heard, oh, my quinoa comes out mushy. I'm never making that again. So don't even tell me about quinoa anymore, Carla. So hopefully that kind of helps the challenge of cooking quinoa. So same thing today. We are going to start with quinoa. I have one more secret to lend to you guys today. Here's the quinoa that I prepared using the method that we went through last week, okay? But it's red, okay? So it's beautiful. It's not sticky. It's not mushy. Big secret for this recipe: when you're serving quinoa in a salad, you want to cool it off completely, okay? It's cool it off. This is cold, okay? Otherwise, when you go to add your ingredients, it'll stick together and become clumpy, like a Play-Doh consistency. It's not very appetizing. And once again, you guys would never want to make a salad recipe with quinoa. And we don't want that to happen. It's so economical. It's so good for us. Complete protein we talked about last week. Simple to use, versatile. It's a blank canvas. You add your flavor to it, and you create your dishes from a really nutritious, inexpensive blank palette.
Any difference between the nutrition of the white and the red quinoa?
No, that's a very good question. It gets asked almost every day to me. No difference in nutrition at all. It's a visual thing. Some people, prefer the color. I love the color, colored quinoa. We also have black, in addition to the red and the white. And then we actually have a mix at Heinen's. We sell it at Heinen's. That is red, black, and white. I think it looks beautiful on a plate. You may not want to use it for breakfast purposes, because in that white bowl, you're adding various ingredients to kind of bring it to life: blueberries, cinnamon, and so forth. But no nutritional difference, just a visual thing. So all we do for this quick and easy recipe is turn your pan on to a low heat, not a very intense heat, because we really don't have to cook anything through here. The quinoa is already prepared. Here's our ingredients. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Doesn't get any simpler. We are going, everybody have the recipe in front of you. So all we do is we take our corn, and it can be fresh. Fresh is ideal, but let's face it, who has time to always use fresh, right? And get the kernels, cut the kernels off that corn on the cob. Frozen is your second best. What's a very good choice is if you can get a canned corn, pretty good quality, like this one right here. This is whole kernel corn. It's organic and it's unsalted. So it's one ingredient, and it works just fine. It's very economical as well. Heat up the corn. Just want to get things a little bit tender. Throw in your black beans, and I'm just using Heinen's organic black beans. You don't have to use organic.
Do you want to rinse them off after? or
Well,
do you
that's a
keep-
very good point. You don't have to rinse them, but I do suggest draining them. Okay, very good point. That way you won't have a lot of extra fluid in the dish. Heat that through. Okay, here is the quinoa. To the quinoa, I'm going to add cumin, a functional food that Melanie explained what a functional food is. earthy, beautiful, pungent, so good for us, has many anti-inflammatory properties if you consume it on a regular basis. So we're just going to take about a teaspoon, and this can be a flavor profile that you'll want to tweak to your preference. I happen to love it. I think cumin brings whatever you're making to life. Okay, we're going to add that beautiful quinoa right to the pan. And that was 1 box of the Ancient Harvest right there. Give it a quick stir around.
So if you made up a box of quinoa at the beginning of the week
Yeah.
and you use it like we talked last week about using this multi-purpose, this could be dinner like literally in 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Yeah, even less. Because
key is
I say
having it
this is a
ready.
5-ingredient, 15-minute recipe, but that 15 minutes kind of accounts for cooking the quinoa itself. If you made the quinoa in advance, stored it in an airtight container, this would probably take you about 5 minutes.
Wow.
Once these things are nice and heated, you get a nice salsa. Get your favorite salsa. I always look for a salsa that the first ingredient is tomatoes. If your first ingredient is tomatoes, there's more whole food in the salsa, and it's less watery, and it'll lend itself very well to a recipe like this. Throw that in there.
Use a full can of that?
Yeah,
a jar?
I use the whole jar.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And again, that could be a preference thing as well. If you want a little bit less, go ahead, use less. I just like the flavor of salsa. And again, I think, you know, quinoa can be, you know, the flavor can be heightened so much with your ingredients. And I think salsa really, really brings the quinoa to life along with the cumin. So we're basically done. The last thing that we do, another functional food right here, cilantro, also called coriander. You can cut it up with your kitchen scissors.
Remember those little herb scissors last week? Yeah, you could use those.
Yeah, and in the interest of time, I did it in advance. Sprinkle that in there. I hope everybody likes some cilantro.
And isn't it true? I remember Dr. Todd, our chief medical officer, saying that cilantro is anti-sugar toxicity,
Yeah, it is.
anti-fat toxicity.
It'll help regulate blood sugars.
Yeah.
So again, functional food brings our health to another level, to a better level, if used on a regular basis. To add a healthy fat, I choose avocado. I think avocados go amazing with Mexican food. Little pointer for you guys. You may already know this. How to slice an avocado for cooking purposes. Get your paring knife. Hold the avocado in the palm of your hand. Kind of go around the circumference of the avocado, like so. You guys done this before? Yeah? Okay. Kind of give it a twist. Get your half of avocado. And then you just score it. And then you go the other way, scoring. And then you just kind of scoop it out. And you get nice, consistent little pieces of avocado. This is the fat that I think is a beautiful complement to this dish. You could add a little coconut oil, you could add a little butter to make this a complete meal. Now, if you were serving this alongside, say, a burrito, a beef burrito or something like that, you would already have fat. You wouldn't have to add any fat to this. But there we are. I'm going to add a little bit of the Himalayan salt and a little bit of pepper. Spice it up a little bit more. 74 minerals and pink Himalayan salt. Raise the dish up to another level, and then I'm going to let you guys try it. Okay, there it goes. That's it. I have black pepper here. I know the ingredient count went up a little bit. These are optional things. So, there we go. Any questions? I have a nice pan of it already prepared here.
I have a question. When you cook the quinoa, did you do it with just plain water?
Just water. Yeah, that's a great question. You could use broth. You could use a low salt vegetable broth if you wanted to start infusing flavor right away into your quinoa. You could do that. You could use a low salt chicken broth.
Equal part, like if it called for a cup of water, you'd use a cup of broth.
Equal part, yeah. Any other questions before we give it a try? I hope you guys like this. One more quick thing is a lot of times a very nice complement to a dish like this is a chip, is a tortilla chip. Instead of using, for instance, a tortilla chip that may be laden with hydrogenated fats, laden with salt, like a Dorito or another brand of chips, this is an excellent choice. These are the Garden of Eden sprouted blue chips. Very clean ingredients. And the corn in the chip has been sprouted in advance. It has been soaked, and the outer kernel of that corn kind of popped. It becomes higher in fiber, and the enzymes and nutrients contained in that corn are now available for us to digest and take advantage of.
Isn't
This
it
is a
even
very-
better for blood sugar too, sprouted
Yep.
versus unsprouted
Yeah.
after that? Yeah. Okay. Not that you eat the whole bag and expect,
Yeah.
but that choice versus another one would be great for blood sugar.
Exactly. So,
Good.
nice healthy choice for you. So let's give it a try, everyone.
Yeah. No,
Good? Okay.
I can help you out here. You want me to?
Oh, great. Sure. I'm just going to put some of this avocado on there.
It looks yummy. It really is a beautiful color.
So simple. So simple. Okay.